Hello and welcome to episode 50 of the Giddy Knits podcast. As always, I'm Helen and I'm coming to you from Dundee in Scotland, where I live with my husband Tom and my two boys, Arthur who is 6 and Jasper who is 3. I am the dyer behind Giddy Yarns and this is my knitting podcast. I predominantly talk about my knitting projects. Occasionally there's some crochet, occasionally there's a few other little bits and pieces of crafts. But generally the podcast is about my knitting and crafting life, I guess. Today is Thursday the 23rd of January 2020. And yeah, what have I got for you today? So I have got a few announcements to make. I'm going to share some works in progress. I've got a couple of finished objects to share with you. I am going to touch on a bit of blanket progress. I've been working quite a lot of my blankets recently. I've got a tiny bit of yarny goodness to share and a little bit of shop news as well at the end. And during the shop news section, I was just going to talk about supporting small businesses as well. So let's get straight into it, I think, shall we? Before I have to restart this section again because I have done the introduction about 3 times. Anyway, firstly, apologies if I sound a little bit snuffly. I have had a bit of a cold. The wonders of Jasper starting nursery, doing more nursery time. Obviously it's been brilliant for me work-wise, but unfortunately it means he's been bringing home all the germs. So yeah, me and Jasper have had a bit of a cold this week, but I think I'm on the mend. But I might sound a bit congested. I've got a cup of tea though, so hopefully that'll help. I've gone for a fruit tea today because otherwise it goes cold and I hate cold tea. It's really hot still. Okay, so announcements. On the last episode, I opened up a giveaway thread to celebrate reaching 1,000 subscribers, which on YouTube, which for me felt like quite a milestone. And I have closed the thread now and I have drawn a winner. There were 67 entries, well, there were 66 entries plus my obviously introduction post in the thread. And I just used a random number generator. So I know most people use like random.org or Alexa or anything like that. Oh, apologies if you've got an Alexa and I just set her off, sorry. But I just used the Google one. Anyway, so we went for a random number between 2 and 67. And the lucky winner was entry number 55, who was just Gima on Ravelry, and that is Gima, I assume. And you are in Oregon, in the United States. So congratulations. If you can drop me your full name and address via Ravelry message, probably the easiest, or via Instagram, whichever you prefer, then that would be great. And I will get your little prize box in the post. I haven't actually got the prize with me. It's tucked away in a drawer behind you to keep it safe. But I did share some of what it was on the last episode. And I will add a few little extra bits and pieces for you before I pop it in the post. Having said contact me on Instagram, I realised I keep forgetting to say where you can find me. Now, I used to have a screen that I put up at the beginning of the podcast so that I didn't have to remember to say it, but I've also been forgetting to put that screen up. So I will say it. So as I said, I'm the dyer behind Giddy Yarns, so you can find me on Instagram as Giddy Yarns. That is predominantly my business page. I do share a few extra bits in the stories and things like that, but generally day-to-day posts on that are yarn related and business related. I also have a personal Instagram account, which is Giddy Helen, and I am trying to share more regularly on there. But if I do share on there, then it'll be kind of family stuff, or it will be kind of what I'm working on, my knitting as well. But it's a public account, so you're welcome to follow me over there as well. I can be found on Ravelry. I'm Giddy Helen on Ravelry. Although I tend to use Ravelry more for, obviously we have the Ravelry group, which again I didn't mention, did I? We have a Ravelry group, which is the Giddy Knits podcast group. You can find it on Ravelry. In fact, it'll be linked below because all the show notes, which I also didn't mention. Oh, this is, yeah, not going well. Anyway, show notes can be found in the Ravelry group, and that will be linked in the drop down menu below. They can also be found on my website, which is www.giddyyarns.com, and that will be linked down below as well. So basically, I'll try and link everything down below so that I don't have to remember to keep telling you. But yeah, what was I trying to say? Ravelry, we have the Ravelry group. I do tend to pop in and out of that, so if you comment in there, I will see it. But I do tend to use Ravelry more for patterns and things like that. I've been trying to upload my projects a little bit more to Ravelry and try and update that a little bit this year, because I've not, the last year or so, it's just been chaos in my life and I haven't been able to keep up with Ravelry. But yes, but if you want to follow me outside of the podcast, then Instagram is probably the best place. Anyway, that was all a little bit rambly, wasn't it? Congratulations to the giveaway winner. And yeah, get in touch and I will send your parcel to you. There is one more announcement before I get into the knitting content, and that is just a quick mention. I'm not sure if I've mentioned on the podcast yet where I will be vending this year. But my first yarn show of the year is Yorkshire Yarn Fest on March the 21st. And that is in York. And I mainly wanted to mention it today because there has been a venue change. I've forgotten where it was supposed to be before it changed. It was it Whitefields? I can't remember. Anyway, it is now at the Poppleton Centre, which apparently is much more central and much more easily accessible, as well as being warmer. From what I have heard from the November event, it was very, very cold. And it was in kind of old barns outside and yeah, a lot colder. So she has moved the event to an inside venue. There is apparently a cafe and everything at the centre. It is apparently has really, sorry, losing my voice already, has really good accessibility and also really good public transport links. So yeah, that will be my first show of 2020 and I'm really looking forward to it. It is a free event. So if you are relatively local and you've not been to a yarn show before, then it would be a good one to try out. Because obviously you aren't having to purchase tickets in advance, so there's no kind of initial commitment of paying for a ticket and then maybe finding that it's not your kind of thing and that you don't enjoy it. Yeah, it's a good way to try out a yarn show and experience what a yarn show is. They've got a number of brilliant vendors, myself included, of course. They've got a number of brilliant vendors and it looks to be a really, really good show. So I am very much looking forward to it. So my next show of the year will be the Cornish Fibre Festival. And that is on the 9th and 10th of May. And it's at the Royal Cornwall Showground in Wadebridge in Cornwall. That one will be a little bit of a trek for me, obviously coming down from Scotland. But for those of you that don't know, I grew up in Cornwall pretty much. We moved down when I was about 12 and I always think of it as kind of home, if that makes sense. It's the place that I spent the longest living as a child. So yeah, I grew up in Cornwall. My parents still live down there. Tom and I met down there. His parents live in Cornwall. We got married down there and yeah, Cornwall is home in my heart, I guess. So yeah, it will be a really good show. It's a 2-day event. I will be able to stay with my parents, which cuts down on costs for hotels, so that's brilliant. And it looks to be a really, really, really good show. And then the third show that I am vending at so far is the Wool Monty, which is in Sheffield. And again, it's another 2-day show. It is in June and I've completely forgotten the dates. I want to say the 14th and 15th. I'll put it on the screen. It's a weekend in June. And I believe it's at the Sheffield Arena, one of the Sheffield arenas, the Fly Arena. Again, I'll put it on the screen. And yeah, another really good accessible event. It had excellent reviews last year in terms of accessibility, and apparently it had fantastic wide aisles, plenty of seating, and yeah, it just sounds to be a really good show and I am looking forward to vending this year. And again, in fact, all of the shows that I am vending at this year have got a really, really good lineup of vendors. So I'm really excited. There are a couple of others that I am hoping to vend at. I have obviously applied again for Perth because it's my local show. Aberdeen Yarn Fest isn't on this year. So obviously I won't be applying because it's not happening. But I will be applying for Perth, and I haven't quite decided, but I do want to apply for one more show later in the year. Yorkshire Yarn Fest have a show on the 28th of November. Unfortunately, that is Arthur's birthday, and I haven't quite decided whether I can justify doing a yarn show in Yorkshire on Arthur's birthday yet. But we will see. Anyway, I have now rambled about yarn shows for plenty of time. So let's move on to some actual knitting, shall we? Finished objects. I have 2 finished objects. I have been working really hard on trying to get some of my works in progress off the needles, particularly my sock whips, because they have been annoying me. So I have finally finished 2 pairs of socks. The first pair are these lovely little shorty socks, and I do have a second one here finished. And I didn't particularly follow a pattern for these. They're just kind of a vanilla sock. I think I did 12 rounds of rib. I then did 10 rounds on the leg before popping in a German short row heel. And then I knit the foot until it fitted me and put a toe in, basically. The yarn I used for these is one of my Halloween colourways. So this was Twilight. And I love how this colourway knits up. It's a beautiful kind of micro striping almost. Really, really nice. And as I said, I have knit both of them. So I'll be popping these away for the summer. So that is really good. I'm really glad that these are off the needles. They're one of those works in progress that's just been sitting there for ages. But they're done. And then the second work in progress, the second finished object even. Apologies if I'm drinking more than I usually do during a podcast, but I'm losing my voice. The second finished object I have is another pair of socks, and it is these lovely socks here, which you will have seen before. And these are the window seat socks. See if I can get that pattern to show up. And this is a pattern by Jessie Marie Makes. And I actually test knit the first sock of this one. It isn't using self-striping yarn. It uses 2 different yarns, although the pattern is written to be able to do it with self-striping or to create your own stripes. The pattern is also written toe up and cuff down. So it's a really versatile pattern. It's really well written. It includes a short row heel in the pattern, and yeah, it's a lovely pattern. And it's just really, really effective. It features a slip stitch pattern, which works really well with 2 colours. So yeah, really, really pleased to have got these done. I am contemplating putting together some kits for this pattern for some of my shows. I used 2 50-gram balls, and it worked really well. You might want, if you wanted a slightly longer leg, you might want to alternate what you use for. So maybe do the heel in the opposite colour. Does that make sense? I think I was quite close. I haven't actually weighed, and I haven't got the leftovers near me. I didn't weigh how much grey yarn I had left, but I definitely had less grey yarn left than I did the coloured one. So the yarns I used, oh my goodness, I'm sorry, this is going to be really all over the place today, isn't it? The yarns I used were my own yarns. So this one is Storm Cloud, and the coloured one in between is Voyage of the Dawn Treader. So I had a lot less Storm Cloud left than I did Voyage of the Dawn Treader. So I would recommend, if you wanted to knit these socks out of 2 50-gram balls, I would recommend using one colour for the toe and the cuff and the other colour for the heel. Just so that you kind of spread that yarn out a little bit more and you don't risk playing yarn chicken. But as for me, it did work for me. And I was lucky I was able to get it out without too much concern. But yeah, absolutely beautiful pattern. and really pleased to have these finished. And that is all of my finished objects. But I do have some works in progress to share. And I'm looking at my show notes to try and remember what I was sharing. Really hot, I don't know why. Right, so I have put some work on a couple of my bigger projects. Not a lot of work, I'll admit, but some work. So the first one I have put a little bit of work into is my Pure Joy, which is living in this gorgeous bag from the Little Grey Girl. I picked this up from her at Edinburgh Yarn Festival last year, and I love it. This is her new luxury drawstring bag. It's got a lovely handle, it's got pockets inside. You know how much I love gems bags. But yeah, this is my Pure Joy shawl. And this is a pattern by Hohi Locatelli. Yikes, there we go. And last time I showed you it on the podcast, I was where this little stitch marker is. Just there. And this is a lovely little stitch marker from Hannah at the Corner of Craft. Eastery one, but I don't care. So this is... So I'm trying to work out how to show it to you. My needles are probably a little bit too short. This is a really interesting pattern. So it's worked with short rows, basically. So your first section is this kind of section before the grey stripe, and then each wedge comes out, and then they're obviously wider at this end. So although it looks like I haven't necessarily done a lot of work, I have actually finished that short row wedge. Yeah. So it was a reasonable amount of work on this, to be fair. And the yarn I'm using, see if I can show you. I'm using 2 colours of King Fibres yarn. The green, this one here, is called Cactus, and the grey is called Platinum. And the yarn base for this is, what's that on there? A bit of leaf. The yarn base for this is a high twist Blue-Faced Leicester yarn, which is really, really lovely. It's got such a lovely twist to it. Yeah, it's really lovely, and it is really soft. It's going to block out beautifully. And interestingly, this is actually a base that I now stock in my shop. Yeah, it's really, really, really good base. Anyway, I have been putting some progress on this, and I have told myself I'm not allowed to cast on anything new until I've finished one of my larger projects. I'm not sure how long I will last with that, but we will see. Hopefully I will be able to stick to it. And the second work in progress I have been putting some work onto, you know what I'm trying to say. This is, as always, also living in a Little Grey Girl bag, but these lovely. I like this one. The llamas, alpacas, llamas. It's fun. Is my Starflake, and this is just getting really long rows. So last time I haven't moved my stitch marker to show you where I was last time, but last time I podcast, I think I had just finished these wedges. I'd done this first row of eyelets. So I have added 2 eyelet rows since, which, considering the length of these rows, is actually not bad going. There is the option with this pattern to do some extra rows after this eyelet section, but I don't know. Part of me really likes how it looks with the extra rows, but part of me is really ready for this to be off the needles. I am hoping to have this as a sample for Yorkshire Yarn Fest, and I'm hoping to maybe put together some sort of kits for it. So I need to get it done, really. But I do love it, and I am really, really enjoying how it is knitting up. The yarns that I'm using for this are my yarns, as suggested by the fact that it's a sample. And I am using Sandcastles, which is this lovely kind of speckled neutral here, and Plum Chutney, which is this one here. And they're on. It's on my. They're both on my standard merino nylon base. But yeah, I need to just get these projects done, don't I? I need to just sit down and work on them and not get distracted by other things. So the last knitting project that I have put any work into in the last couple of weeks is my little scrappy scarf. And I've not put masses of work in, but I have woven in all the ends. I was being very good. You'll notice I haven't trimmed them off yet because I won't do that until it's blocked, just in case they kind of shrink in slightly when I block it. This is obviously the wrong side that I'm showing you. But yeah, I have put in a little bit of work. I have added kind of 4 colours. I was there. To this, but it is such a soothing project. It really is enjoyable and relaxing and soothing. The pattern is Find Your Own Direction Scarf by Erin Beale, who is the dyer behind Henny Penny Makes, and it is such a great pattern for using up scraps. You use all of like 2 to 3 grams of yarn per section in this, and it is quite a narrow scarf. I mean, it is going to block out when you wash it. It is going to block out wider. I am intending on making it kind of long enough that I can either double it over, or maybe I might join the ends and create like a Mobius cowl kind of thing. I don't know. But yeah, really, really, really soothing, relaxing project, and a great way of using up tiny scraps. Okay, so the next work in progress I've got isn't actually knitting. It is cross stitch. Although I am going to have a sip of tea and I'm going to reset my camera, and then I will share with you the cross stitch. Okay, so cross stitch. Those of you who've watched the podcast for a while will remember me sharing and finishing this cross stitch a while back. Now how well that's showing up there. This is a pattern by Plastic Little Covers. She's on Etsy and she does PDF patterns. I think she does some kits and stuff. I just used my own, bought my own bought my own threads for it. But this was the first one that I completed. And I am planning on creating these to go in our bedroom above our bed. So that's the first one, and I am working on the second one. Now, I did do something stupid. And I have actually got 2 completely different sized pieces of Aida. So if you have cross stitch in the past and you know anything about cross stitch, you'll know that the fabric that you tend to cross stitch into, this one is called, well, I pronounce it Aida. I don't know if that's how it is pronounced, but that's how I've always pronounced it. And it has a count. So this one, I believe, is 16 count. I'm not 100% sure. And the count is to do with, like, I think it's to do with how many holes you get per inch. So this one, I believe, was a 16 count. Now, I didn't check when I got the Aida for the second one. I didn't check what count I'd used for the first one. And I just picked up some 14 count Aida at Hobbycraft because it was cheap. But it does mean that, unfortunately, it is bigger than the previous one, but it doesn't matter too much. But this is the second one, the one I am currently working on. As you can see, I have done the top section and I have finished all of the stitching, the words on there as well. And I am just starting to add the floral bit on the bottom section. So the aim is that once these are finished, I will get them framed and I will pop them up above our bed in our bedroom. And I have got a third one to go in between, which is, I think it kind of says, and they all lived happily ever after. And it's got some more of the kind of floral motifs to go with it. But yeah, I've been really enjoying getting back to doing a little bit of cross stitch, and I really want to get these finished so that I can put them up, because our bedroom is really boring. Yeah. Anyway, that is all of my kind of works in progress section, I guess, although I am going to move on now to some blanket progress, which technically is works in progress as well, but I don't count blankets as works in progress, which is a good thing, considering I think I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at least 5 blankets on the go. However, 4 of those, yeah, just checking my show notes, 4 of those I have put some work into. So I'm going to share them with you. The first one that I have got some work into is my Battenberg blanket. And this is a pattern by Sandra Paul, who is Cherry Heart, and she has the Cherry Heart podcast. Her one uses white as her in-between squares. I am obviously using grey. I have also changed the pattern slightly in that her pattern does 3 rounds in the granny square, whereas I'm doing 4 rounds. Just because I wanted to. I wanted to use up a little bit more of the yarn. But this is where we are. So I think last time I showed this on the podcast, I can't remember whether I had showed this row or not, but certainly this top row here with this marker on has been finished this week. So I have added another row and it is growing slowly. I think the one thing that I find really frustrating with this pattern is that I have to make the grey squares. And obviously that's not as interesting as making the coloured squares, so I can find it quite boring to have to sit down and make sort of 7 or 8 grey squares to do a row. But I'm loving the way it's looking, and it's going to be amazing when it's finished, so I will persevere. I have been very, very good with this one, and you will notice that apart from the edges, apart from at the edges, I have actually woven in all the ends as I've been going. I've been trying to crochet them in, but occasionally I forget to pick one up, in which case it gets woven in, but they are all woven in. I am leaving the ones at the edges at the moment because I will probably do some kind of crocheted border around the outside, and when I do that I'll be able to pick them up and crochet them in to the border, basically. But yeah, really, really pleased with how this is coming along. Yeah, really, really enjoying it. And then the next blanket, let's go for knitting, shall we? So that was a crochet blanket. Let's go for a knitting blanket. And the other one that I have put some work into is my Cozy Memories blanket. Oh, which I can't get out. There we go. I think I might actually be in the middle of a square. Of course I am. I have been designating I have been designating Sundays as kind of a blanket day. So I know that traditionally, it's not traditionally, is it? I know quite often on Instagram there is the hashtag Scrappy Sundays, and the idea is that on Sundays you work on scrappy projects. Which I've kind of been following along with to some extent, but I kind of have it as that Sundays are my blanket days. Now, most of my blankets are scrappy projects, so that works out fine. But yeah, I've been kind of dedicating Sundays just to working on blanket projects. And that's been really, really enjoyable. So this Sunday just gone, I worked on this one, and that's why I got that that row done. And the previous Sunday I worked on my Cozy Memories blanket. So I am in the middle of a square, but we will try and tuck it all to the back. There we go. So here we go. It is still growing, it is still tiny, it is not big by any means yet, but I have definitely made some progress. So all of the ones with stitch markers on, ignoring this stitch marker marks the centre of the blanket. As I have talked on previous episodes about how I have kind of messed up how I was planning this blanket, and I am having to improvise slightly in the way I'm putting my squares in, because I was trying to do something clever with the direction of the squares. And the original plan was to start with this cross as the centre of my blanket, and just to work outwards in a big cross, if that makes sense. And then I started another row. I can't remember which row. I can't remember where it was now. Anyway, I started another row, and I put the squares the wrong way round, and it all kind of, I did like 2 or 3 squares before I realised that they were the wrong way round and that wasn't going to work. So I've had to change my plan. So this is now the central point of the blanket, and I have kind of planned it out as to which direction they're all going to go in. Now the downside with that is that in a couple of places, now I'm trying to find them. Yeah, I think this one here, this one here, this one here, this one here. Not that one. Anyway, in a few places, I've had to stitch my squares together. I've had to mattress stitch my squares together because I've not been able to pick up and get the direction of the central decrease section in the right direction. Does that make sense? But it is working, and actually it doesn't take much to just mattress stitch them together, to be fair. You can just do it with the tail end of the yarn, and it's, well, I can barely notice where I've done that and where I've picked up the stitches, so it's not bothering me in that respect. Anyway, all the ones I've added since I last talked to you have got stitch markers on. So this one here is one of my colourways. This is the Hobbit. This one here is the mini that came with my baubles sock set, the self-striping socks that I've just finished recently. That one is the mini that came with that for the heel and toe. So that's from Debbie at Down Sheepy Lane. This is a random mini. I believe it was a Skein Queen mini. This one here is one of the colourways from the Lay Family Yarn and Friends club from last year. I believe this one was a Fine Fish Yarn one. This is one of the colours from my So Faded sweater. This one is Yarns Over New York. I believe it was like Welcome to Gowanus colourway. Where else have I got stitch markers? Let's turn this upside down. That one is a really random mini, and I have got no idea what colour it was. That one, I think that's one of mine. That's either Poppy or Let Me Count the Ways. I think it might be Poppy. That one again is another really random colourway, just a sort of a minis that I've received. In fact, all 3 of those are minis that I have received. Oh no, they're not even, they're ones that have been in before. Anyway, yeah, so a bit of a good mix, but I have been putting work into this, and I've been really enjoying it. So hopefully this weekend I will get a little bit more time to put a little bit more work into it and keep seeing progress. Anyway, I talked about that project for a lot longer than I intended to. Sorry about that. Let me see if I can stick that in that bag so that I can not be too much mess. Then I have got, let's go for crochet again. I am working on another crochet blanket. Now, I talked about this one on the last episode. It's living in this lovely bag from Jessie Marie Makes. And this is what I'm calling my Advent blanket. The yarn I am using for this blanket is was all from the Advent calendar by Henny Penny Makes. Now, if you watched Vlogmas, you'll know that Erin and I swapped Advent calendars. And I had one of hers. And what I am doing is I am crocheting up squares out of each of the minis. They were 10-gram minis, and I am getting 8 rounds of just a really simple crochet granny square. Is that the right side? yeah, you can just kind of see where I wound the end, woven the end in there slightly. Really simple, basic granny square. And I am getting 8 rounds. And I'm going to border these all. I haven't decided on a colour yet as to what I'm going to border them with, but I'm going to border them all and just create a nice lap blanket. Now I have now completed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 squares. So I am, it's got loads of my hair all over it. I am over halfway through all of the minis, and they are looking really, really fun. Let's see if I can kind of show you the squares. Erin's advent calendar was Quality Street themed. And if you're curious about the colourways, then I did try and share them and all the little snippets of information and facts that she shared in the calendar on my Vlogmas videos. But yeah, they're really fun colours. And it's going to make for a really fun, really nice blanket. And I still got a few more in there. I've got a few in there that I need to actually sort of cake up as well. And then I will get joining them. And then the final blanket that I've been working on, it's all about the blankets this week. The final blanket that I have been working on is living in another little grey girl bag. And that is the Boundaries blanket, which is part of the Boundaries knit along that Louise Tilbrook is running. And basically every 2 weeks she's releasing a new square, a new blanket square, and this one you've seen because I'd already completed this one on the last episode. And you, at the end of the cal, you should have 12 sort of 6-inch squares ready to join into a good sized lap blanket. And I have completed another square. This one definitely needs some blocking, but it's got this lovely little twisted cable down it. All the squares have this moss stitch border. It's a DK weight yarn that I'm using, and I'm just using Drops Charisma, which is 100% wool. Yeah, just 100% wool. It's a superwash yarn and it'll hold up really well in a blanket. So I've now got 2 squares completed. I think there are 4 or 5 squares out already, so I'm a little bit behind, but that's fine. I'm going to make a start on the next blanket square at some point soon, hopefully. And I'm just using these 2 colours, so the blanket will be grey and pink. What else have I got to share with you? That is all my knitting content, I think. So I was going to touch on it. Well, I've got a little bit of yarny goodness to share with you, just one thing. And then I was going to touch on some shop news. So the one little bit of yarny goodness is the Neon Yarn Club from Spectrum Fibres. This is the December club. She was unwell during December and it came out a little bit late. Not that that bothered me in the slightest because it's yarn. I don't mind waiting for it. It's fine. But this is the December Yarn Club from Spectrum Fibres. How beautiful is that? And the colourway is Neon Heart. And that is just stunning. I got it in a DK weight. So this is her double knit springy twist base. It's 115 grams and there's 230 meters in there. And it is absolutely beautiful, isn't it? I have got no idea what I'm going to do with this. I do need some mitts. That was something else I was going to talk about. I don't know whether I'm going to have time. Maybe I'll do a separate little video on that. Anyway, you'll find out. I do need some fingerless mitts, and I could handle some bright pink fingerless mitts. That might be really fun. I don't know. Anyway, that was my yarny goodness. So let's move on now to some shop news. Okay, I got really distracted and realised there was a section that I wanted to put in that I'd forgotten about and I'd not mentioned earlier, and then I started trying to mention it and it all went completely wrong. So I have just stopped and I have got myself organised. And I will now talk about that here. Before I get into shop news, let's hope that my editing makes this make more sense than it currently does in my head. Anyway, one thing I wanted to talk about was Make 9. Now, for those of you, I've got hair going everywhere now. For those of you that have followed for a while, you know that I kind of took part in the Make 9 challenge. Is it a challenge? It's not really a challenge, is it? But anyway, the Make 9 thing on Instagram. And the idea is that you pick 9 projects to be your focus for the year. Now, I did that last year and I did reasonably well. I shared on Instagram on my Giddy Helen account kind of the progress that I'd made and the things. I think I'd completed 6 out of the 9 projects. Yeah. Now, I wasn't planning on doing Make 9 again this year. This would be I'd done it 2 years in a row, and both years I hadn't succeeded in completing all of my projects. Not that it really mattered. It's more about kind of focusing your intentions and what you want to work on. But then I was watching the lovely Lindsay, who is a brand new podcaster, and she has the Stitch Create Love podcast on YouTube. And she's got 3 videos out so far. First one is her first episode. Then she did a Make 9 episode, and then she's just released her second episode, which I watched today. And I would highly recommend you go and check Lindsay out, because she is, an absolute natural in front of the camera. And I've really, really enjoyed her episodes so far. But I was watching her Make 9 episode, and it convinced me that I should do Make 9 again this year. But I am going to do it slightly differently. So I am being a lot more relaxed with the idea of the Make 9 this year, and I have picked the majority of my 9 things. I have gone for categories rather than specific projects. So I thought I would run through. I will pop my Make 9 grid up on the screen here just quickly so that you can see kind of what I'm thinking, but I will run through it. So the first thing I want to do this year is I want to knit a garment for Arthur, because bless him, I haven't knit him a garment in absolutely ages. And Jasper is now getting to the age where he is starting to wear the garments that I had knit for Arthur previously. And I kind of feel like I need to knit more for Arthur, because obviously the advantage of knitting for Arthur is that Jasper also gets to wear them when he grows into them. So my original plan last year was to knit the Tender Heart sweater, which is a Tin Can Knits pattern, for Arthur, and I think I'm going to still try and do that. I think the reason I didn't cast it on is, well, Arthur had some issues with the colour choices. He changed his mind about what colour he wanted, and it was all a bit chaotic. So I think I'm just going to go ahead with the yarn I've got, and he'll just have to accept the colour. If he refuses to wear it, then at least Jasper will wear it. But also, it's a colourwork project, and I don't do a lot of colourwork. I really want to get into colourwork, but it is something that I have always struggled with. I think part of that is because I feel like I should be doing it two-handed. I should be doing it with, the 2 colours in separate hands, and that just doesn't work for me. It doesn't work with my style of knitting. So I think I just need to forget that, and I just need to accept that I'm going to have both of them in the hand, and it's going to be a bit slower, but it will be more comfortable. So that's my first hopeful project. The second one on there is the Angelus Novus cardigan, which I believe is a pattern by Renee Callahan, who is East London Knits, or have I got that completely wrong? I forgot to look it up. Hopefully I didn't. I purchased yarn for this at Edinburgh, so I have yarn for it, which is perfect. I have got some absolutely lovely purple Eden Cottage yarn, and it's a BFL silk blend. So that is going to be my next big cast on, I think. Then the next thing I need is I want to knit some fingerless mitts for me, because I have cold hands. I don't have any fingerless mitts and I need some. So having watched Lindsay, I am going to knit the Country Garden mitts, which is a pattern that I've had it on my radar for a while. It's a pattern by Ellie of Craft House Magic. And in fact, she did a whole selection with the same kind of stitch pattern. So she's got a sock pattern, which is obviously fingering weight. And then she's got a beret, a cowl, and some fingerless mitts, which are all DK weight. So I think I'm going to knit those. So as soon as I get one of my big projects off the needles, that will be the next thing on my needles. The other thing I want to knit is another, well, I put on it another gnome or a toy. I've really enjoyed knitting my 2 gnomes, and yeah, I want to knit another one. And very fortunately, this week, Sarah of Imagine Landscapes, who is the gnome lady, has announced that she's having another mystery gnome knit along. So that's that sorted. That starts in February. So I will be knitting another gnome. I want to knit myself 10 pairs of socks. Well, I say myself. To be fair, I'm going to include socks for gifts or for Tom or for somebody else. That's fine. I want to knit 10 pairs of socks this year, but they need to be cast on this year. So the ones that I have finished don't count. That's just my little rule for myself. I want to knit another garment for me. I would quite like to be able to knit 2 garments for me this year, but I'm keeping that one general in case something grabs my eye and I want to knit that. I do have yarn for a pavement sweater, so that may be the project that I go for, but we will see. I also have ideas for a radiate pullover as well. So the pavement sweater is a pattern by Vera Valimaki, and the radiate is a pattern by Joji Locatelli. And in fact, the first time I purchased the Neon Yarn Club from Spectrum Fibres, I purchased it in a DK with the idea that I would use that for the radiate sweater and just dye myself up some dark grey for the body. But I don't know. We will see. The other thing I want to knit is a hat. My lovely DK hat. I've got a lovely Olive and Jack hat. I always want to call it the Ollie and Jack hat because of the Ollie and Bella podcast, and I always want to call it the Ollie and Jack hat, but it's not. It's the Olive and Jack hat, I believe. I had that for ages, and I knit it out of absolutely lovely MCN yarn that Tom had bought me in America, but it has lost its stretch, so it is just a little bit floppy and a little bit sad right now. So I need a new DK hat. So that is, again, something that needs to go on the needles quite soon. Then the other pattern that I have specified is the Adama cowl, or it's just called Adama. And it is this gorgeous kind of chunky cowl, which I just think it looks really cozy and really fun. And I was gifted in a fibre share swap some really nice yarn that would work absolutely perfectly for this pattern. It's a pattern by, is it Hilary Callis, I believe? And I don't think it would take long. I think it would be quite a quick knit. I just need to get some needles that are big enough. And yeah, that's definitely something I want to try and make this year. And then the final thing I want to make is a Christmas garland. Now, if you watched my Vlogmas series, you'll have noticed that throughout December I knit crocheted a couple of little Christmas garlands with little stars that were then joined together with a crochet chain. And they were so fun and they were so pretty, and I crocheted them as gifts. So I don't have one, but I would really like to make one. And what I would like to do is I would like to use the leftovers from my Spectrum Fibres advent calendar to make it. So I think what I'm going to do is I am going to crochet up 24 little stars out of those leftovers, and then just join them all together with something. I don't know quite what kind of yarn I'm going to use quite yet, but maybe just a dark grey or whatever I can find, and then we can use it to decorate our house next Christmas. So those are let's get the grammar correct, shall we? Those are my Make 9 plans for 2020. So thank you, Lindsay, for completely enabling me into doing Make 9 again, despite not planning on it. But yeah, I think I've gone about it in a way that will make it more achievable for me, hopefully. We'll find out, won't we, come December this year. Oh, dates. Okay, anyway, let's move on very briefly in that case. Having added this section in, it's going to make the podcast longer than I'd planned, but anyway, to shop news. I will share a couple of little bits. I talked about the Winnie the Pooh update in the last episode, but I didn't have any yarn to show you. Now, the Winnie the Pooh update has actually been very, very popular. I was not anticipating how popular it has been. So unfortunately, I don't have any of the minis left. I did the shop update, and within a very short period of time, all of the mini bundles had sold out. I then restocked the shop yesterday with another lot of 10 mini bundles, and they all sold out again. And I don't currently have enough mini skeins in stock to restock the shop with those mini bundles again, especially considering that I will be dyeing up some super special minis in February. I can't tell you about those yet though. But I will be dyeing up those mini bundles again. I am going to dye some up for Yorkshire Yarn Fest, and obviously any that remain after that will go in the shop. So if you didn't manage to get hold of them, then I'm very, very sorry. But they will be coming back again at some point later in the year. But I do have some of the full colourways, the full skein left. I have, so this is the Winnie the Pooh colourway. This is Pooh Sticks. And it's obviously inspired by the game Pooh Sticks. If you don't know Pooh Sticks, basically it is a game that Winnie the Pooh invents. In one of the chapters, I think it's the book is The House at Pooh Corner, in that book. It is, basic idea is that you throw a stick off one side of a bridge over a river, and then you run to the other side, and whoever's stick comes out first is the winner. I'm sure everybody knows of Pooh Sticks. We played Pooh Sticks as kids all the time. And my grandma used to love Winnie the Pooh. And she took us to the 100-acre wood, to the kind of original forest, and we played Pooh Sticks off the original bridge when we were little. So this is Pooh Sticks. Anyway, I'm waving this at you. This one here is dyed on the BFL, High Twist BFL base. I have got a couple of these in stock, and I have also dyed it on DK, which is here. It's a little bit lighter on this skein. It's just to do with how the different yarns take colour. And I do have it on merino nylon because I did restock that on Wednesday because it had sold out, but there is some on merino nylon, but it's all downstairs because I was just skeining it up earlier. The other thing that I updated the shop with this last week, I need more drink. The other thing I updated the shop with last week was 2 new colourways for the winter collection. And here they are. So this is the first one. This is Winter Woodland. And again, I've got this one dyed up on BFL nylon, on merino nylon, and on DK. And this one is inspired by kind of frosty woodland walks. And you've got the brown of the woods. I think I can show you on this one. You've got the browns of the woods, of the sort of the bare trees, the reds of the berries. And then it's kind of a, I don't know, I think of it as a frosty green. And then the last one is this one, which is Hoarfrost. There we go. And again, these are dyed on the same basis. So you've got it dyed on merino nylon. How well these colours are coming out. Oh, yeah, no, that's not too bad. BFL nylon and DK as well. I'm loving this colour at the moment. I absolutely love the speckles on this. Really, really pleased with how this one came out. But they are available in the shop. Yeah. What else was I going to say? Nostalgia Club, the January one has closed. I have dyed it all up. I just need to get it all skeined up and labelled and everything, and then it will be shipping out next week, hopefully. And the February instalment will be opening up on the 1st of February. I'm assuming I won't podcast before the 1st of February because that's only like a week away, isn't it? So I thought I'd just mention it. Okay, I've recorded and re-recorded this bit multiple times, and it keeps coming off as if I am having a go at the people who are on yarn diets. So I'm going to try one more time. I wanted to talk a little bit about supporting small businesses and the ways that you can support small businesses without purchasing. This time of year, a lot of people start yarn diets, start the year with a resolution to knit only from their stash and things like that, which as a small independent business can obviously be slightly disconcerting. But there are a lot of ways that you can support small businesses without purchasing. And if you are on a yarn diet, or you are wanting to reduce your stash or work only from stash, then maybe those are ways that you could consider still supporting your favourite yarn dyers, your favourite small businesses. So the first of those ways is sharing their posts, basically. If you use Instagram or Facebook or other social media, then you can, of course, share their posts, share their products, so that your followers see them, and your knitting friends who, pardon me, your knitting friends who may not be on yarn diets will see them too. Word of mouth is always really, really useful. When you comment, think about what you're commenting. Just not a throwaway comment that says, oh, it's lovely, but I'm on a yarn diet, because that can be slightly upsetting when, you've, as a small business owner, you've worked really, really hard on that product and somebody is basically saying they're not going to buy it. But I mean, even just a comment that says, oh, that's lovely, and leave it at that, there's no reason to point out that you won't be purchasing. And that's one of the things that keeps coming across when I'm saying this as me being slightly negative about it. And I don't mean it like that. I just mean be a little bit more thoughtful about the person who's going to be reading that comment. But comments, if you are on a yarn diet and you want to comment, then by all means, comment on how lovely the yarn is. I don't need to know that you're not going to purchase it. I don't track who comments on my posts and who purchases the yarn. But comments can help, because obviously they can increase, I think, the algorithms and make you seen more regularly, maybe. Tag a friend. If you have a knitting friend who might like what you're sharing, then by all means tag them in the post. What else was I going to say? If you're working with our yarn, if you have our yarn in your stash and you are working with it, then please, please, please tag us in your knitting projects. When you share your pictures of your progress on social media, tag us. I say we, but certainly me, and I know a number of other yarn dyers who would feel the same way, love seeing your progress, love seeing you work with our yarn. And then we can share that, and people can see what is being created out of our yarn. And if they've never used indie dyed yarn before, then it might be a way of kind of swaying them to purchase. That does not sound right. It might be a way of showing other people how yarns can knit up, how things can work. So yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to say. There are a number of ways, certainly via social media and things like that, to share the love, I guess, for small businesses, even if you aren't in a position to purchase. I think that's what I'm trying to say. Hopefully this will come out a lot better than what I was trying to say previously. But yeah, we appreciate every like, every tag, every share, every mention is appreciated by small businesses, because it all helps. So even if you're not in a position to purchase, then hopefully you are in a position to be able to do one of those things and yeah, It all helps and it's all appreciated. That's what I was trying to say, and I should have said it that way around the first time rather than sounding like a grumpy so-and-so. But you won't see that because I'll have cut all of that out. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. And if you've enjoyed what you've seen, then please hit the thumbs up down below, comment, interact with me. And I will see you again in a couple of weeks' time for another episode. Yeah, hopefully. Thank you very much. See you soon. Bye.